Hello, everyone. Today, I'm afraid that I won't be able to be my usual peppy self because we are talking about serious business today. We are talking about something intense. We are talking about something spooky, scary, nerve-wracking. We are talking about
Resident Evil.
Yeah. Yeah. That. Dick. What's up, everybody? It's been a while. I suck. We all know it. Let's get to today's video, shall we? Today's video, I'm just going to be frank, is something that I never, ever expected that I would ever be making on my channel, let alone it being the next video that I would make. But I have been struck with passion, one could say, and something beautiful has happened that often happens when you are a gamer. I have fallen in love with a new franchise, and one that I never, ever, ever expected to fall in love with, as I am not a horror girl. I have a ton of respect for the horror franchise, like the artistry of it, like what it's able to do, how you pull it off. So much respect. But I'm a scaredy cat. So I never in a million years imagined that I would fall in love with the Resident Evil franchise. Yes, I have been going a little bit nuts on it, to be honest with you. And it's been a blast. I don't remember the last time I kind of like binged a whole new gaming series, but it felt awesome. So yeah, I'm here to talk about my journey through the horrifying, spoopy, amazingly designed, incredibly solid Resident Evil franchise. Now, I'm sure it needs no introduction for so many of you. I mean, it's basically like the flagship, like main horror series in video games, right? It kind of like, there's others, but it's kind of the big one when people think of it. And I played through the series. I didn't play every game, mind you, but I played through quite a lot of them and most of the numbered entries. I will state right here that there might be some minor spoilers if you've never played through the Resident Evil series. It's not the most story intensive thing, but if that sort of thing bothers you, then keep that in mind. What I'm going to basically be doing here, because I just kind of want to talk about it, I mean, why not, right? What I'm going to basically be doing here is just going one by one through the entries that I played and talk about them, talk about what I loved, what the very few things I might not have loved, and just overall my take on everything. So here's how it started, right? The Resident Evil 4 remake just came out. And I know, like, although I've never played a single entry, if you kind of follow, the gaming industry, especially like if you've been a Nintendo fan for a long time, you would know how much impact Resident Evil 4 made. Anyone who was anyone at the time knew that Resident Evil 4 was like the game, a masterpiece, absolutely amazing. And so I watched my boyfriend I didn't watch him pick it up, but bring home Resident Evil 4 remake. That'd be kind of interesting. Just like spying on him while he's in Best Buy. He brought home Resident Evil 4 remake, and I saw him play, and I kind of got inspired. I was like, this looks really fun. This looks fun. This looks intense. It looks interesting. So when he had gone to sleep for the night, I booted up my own playthrough of it. And I think I got to not too far, like the opening monologue when Leon Kennedy is talking about like his past and the events that have led him to Resident Evil 4. something went off in my brain a little bit, but I started playing a little bit. And almost immediately I was like, oh, I like this. I like this. I I don't play horror games, right? So for me, so much of the wow factor here was kind of like, I like the way this is trying to spook me. I like the way like I'm walking and a new scary thing, though subtle, appears and it's slowly getting my heart rate up. And why do I enjoy this? Kind of like a roller coaster, right? Sometimes we enjoy the things that terrify us. And I was like, I really like this. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. I shouldn't be doing this. Let's start at the beginning. Let's work our way up. Let's get there from the start. So I proceeded to download the original Resident Evil, the remake of it, the GameCube version, which most would say is the best version. Unfortunately, it's missing a few things that I would say are, better in the original version. Yeah, that. But people basically call it a masterpiece, right? The original Resident Evil is like kind of like, it's like that Mario, that Zelda, that, freaking Halo, The Last of Us. It's like that. It's one of the games, the Hallmark games. It's a masterpiece that people talk about all the time and is like just in, video game history forever. Like, and I was curious. So I was like, okay, let's try it out. And so we begin my journey with the very first Resident Evil game I played as Jill Valentine. I was told that each version is different, but I'm going to play as a girl because girls are cute. So I played as Jill Valentine and I played, I believe, on standard. Almost all of these I did standard, just so you know. And I played Resident Evil, the remake of the original on Switch. First off, great port, pretty much perfect. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't have been, but for those who might want it on the Switch, cool to play in handheld. And I gotta say, I was pretty blown away by it. There are some people who say like it's hard to get into because of the older gameplay stylings, of it. The somewhat tanky controls. I mean, it used to be like full tank, but like the somewhat more rigid controls, the survival aspects, all the elements that kind of make it more difficult, more strenuous, and not as user friendly, I guess, for like someone, for like someone more used to new games. But as someone who grew up with games like my whole life, it wasn't too much of a problem for me. And as I found out, personally, I think the limitations of the game made it better. It made it scarier. The fact that it was difficult sometimes to run away from a zombie gave me that rush. The fact that I had to aim very properly, it made me, really think instead of just shooting blindly. The fact that the resources are scarce, I freaking loved it. I realized from this game that I think I'm a big fan of the survival genre. I love that feeling of just barely getting by. You know what I mean? Getting by the skin of your teeth all the time, because the game is just constantly filled with these moments of like, oh my God, I made it. Okay, let me take a breath. And it's great. It's fantastic. It's so immersive in that way. And I love that limitation of it. I love that ammo is tough to find. So you have to think, when should I shoot? Who should I shoot? What ammo should I even use? I might need some later. Your ink ribbons, I gotta save some, because that's how you save in the game, right? You literally have a limited number of saves. That's insane when you think about it today, but I loved it. I loved having to think that through. Okay, do I feel like I've made enough progress that I could probably throw a save in here, constantly thinking about that. And as the series goes on, I'm sure many know, it kind of veers away from that. And the first Resident Evil wasn't probably my favorite in the franchise, but I do miss some of those elements for sure. It is definitely the most survivally, probably, with the exception of maybe one other entry I'm going to talk about, but it's probably the most survivally. But I love it. I love that rush. And look, like I said, I'm kind of a scaredy cat, but these games aren't the scariest games ever. I think they're perfect entryway points for a person like me into horror and this kind of stuff, because it's never overwhelming. It's like, I can do this. It's just, I need to be brave. And I there's a sense of satisfaction in that. So much satisfaction in just, I can do this. I can do this. It really does feel like it's testing you and you are overcoming it. Yeah, it's not like Amnesia, The Dark Descent, which I just flat out just couldn't do, or Outlast or anything like that. I mean, I guess maybe some people would argue it's kind of closer to that, but you always feel like you have a chance. You have a fighting chance. And when you finally get to that ending and you've made it out, it's such a great feeling. There's a certain unique sense of satisfaction that you get, particularly, I think, from the endings of Resident Evil games. I made it. I did it. I overcome the odds. Now, that's video games in general, right? But I like the limitations. I do. Sometimes people crap on that kind of stuff, but kind of like movies, like filmmaking, I think sometimes limitations make it better because it breeds more creativity. Now, some of these limitations were probably on purpose, of course, which I think works for it. I really do. One thing about the first one that I will mention that I think it probably excels at than any of the others is the atmosphere. The very first Resident Evil blew me away in like how I felt throughout it, despite like corny dialogue, despite some silly things happening here and there. Luckily, your character is almost never speaking when it's just you. So it's just your brain in this mansion. But it makes some clever decisions that I think, for me, added something to it that the others didn't have. Now, again, it's not my favorite entry, but like, there's rarely music for First of All, which I think is a great choice. I'm going to talk about 2 next, right? Despite anything I say about 2, it's got a lot of music. And sometimes I think that's not always the right choice. There are these incredibly terrifying moments that use no music in the original Resident Evil. And I'm surprised that kind of was forgotten later on. But like, yeah, I mean, it's effective. Like when you're walking down a hall and all you hear is that, and you're like, what is that? Why do I hear like a rickety sound? And then you see a shadow of a zombie slowly trying to get into the window. It's terrifying. I love it. I freaking love it. Honestly, wouldn't work without music, right? Also, the way the camera works. This was, the only entry I played with like the pre-rendered, like, backdrops and you move through them. Now, I don't have a problem with the fact that we moved away from that because I like the flexibility of other entries, but it does give the first one kind of more of a scare factor. You don't feel as in control. I think there's a psychology behind it. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think there's a psychology behind it because when you are in control of the camera of a game, you feel more in control yourself, and that's less scary. But in the original Resident Evil, the world is the world, and you have to walk through it and overcome it. You can't manipulate it. It is there and you're walking through it. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, it's pre-rendered and you walk through it, right? There's no camera control pretty much. And that makes it scarier. That makes you feel less in control. And I love it. I love it. I can see what so much why people call the game a masterpiece. Did I have any issues with it? I mean, there's some things that like it being an older game kind of shows. The boss battles aren't particularly exciting. There were some times where the aiming felt a little clunky, but honestly, it really, really holds up. And it's easily the most difficult to figure out because it's the one with the most puzzles and the most having to figure things out. And some of the stuff you have to figure out, it got me stumped for a while. Personally, I think, given the design of the game, and I know there are people who are definitely going to disagree with this. I don't necessarily know if this applies to the other entries. I wouldn't say so, but I see the first one as sort of a Metroidvania, at least just in spirit and heart, because it's all just in one giant manner with constant backtracking and unlocking things that then unlock areas you've already seen, stuff like that. I guess you could say it's also similar to Zelda. I mean, these kind of games pull from those classics all the time, of course, but this was the one where I really felt like I was playing a Metroidvania, and I loved it. It was also like, it's kind of like a point and click sometimes. You really have to figure out what the heck to do with certain items, take it apart, combine it with something. I got stumped sometimes, but overall, I can see why it is such a classic. Fantastic game. Fantastic. I don't have really many negatives to say. It was a terrific start. And from there on, I was like, oh, baby, let's go. Like, let's go. I'm into this. I want to see where this goes. And I did. So next up, of course, was Resident Evil 2. Now, I was told, and I'll talk more about this, but I was told that the remake was perfectly sufficient to just play that and get the idea of what 2 is, and that it's the better version, quite frankly. Will I go back? Will I play the original 2? Very possible. Probably. I will be playing the original 3, but it's very possible. But I played the remake, and I remember when Resident Evil 2 remake came out, the glowing reviews, some people just calling it one of the best remakes ever made. And although my choices here can flip and flop depending especially on which one I probably played the most recently, I think that Resident Evil 2 remake is tied for my first place for my absolute favorite Resident Evil game. I know, right? Only the second one in, but it's true. It's an amazing game. It takes what the first one does, but it applies it now to like multiple areas, and it does so in a way that makes the series feel more action-packed without actually sacrificing that level of survival and fear. First off, I love just being in being able to see like other environments. I love that you get to see a little bit more of Raccoon City. Most of the game is in a police department, but this is the one that I think is the most pure zombie. You know what I mean? This is zombies. This is zombies have taken over the world, have taken over the city, and you have to survive. And surprisingly, there aren't actually that many entries that I've played so far that are really kind of that idea of just like, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, just straight up, that classic stuff. And that's what this is. And holy crap, what an awesome game. First off, I love the fact that it retains that puzzle solving, that backtracking, the stuff that I love. Excellent level design. This whole series is filled with excellent level design. Just that satisfying. I got this, so I can go figure this out. If I have but if I have kind of a thing that I wish, wasn't the case when I played through the entire Resident Evil series as a whole. Is a lot of times the stuff, the unlockables were a little easy to find. And like, sometimes I wish I had to work more for it, but you're constantly being tested. Where does this go? What is this puzzle? And it's this beautiful pacing to me where it's never too difficult, usually. Very few times, but it's usually never too difficult to the point where you constantly feel like you're moving. You're never stuck for too long. You're never getting bored. I played my entire first playthrough as Claire Redfield, by the way, who I love, adorable character. I played the whole thing in one sitting because I was just so enthralled. It's so good. Like it is the first one, but supercharged. And I freaking loved it. I love third person. I've always been more of a third person. I think that first person is typically scarier, sure. But I like to see my character. And Claire and Leon are great characters. They're really, really likable. Like I said, Claire's kind of adorable. Like she has these just cute little moments. She's flirting with Leon. I loved her. So much so that I cosplayed her. Yeah, I really got into this series, you guys. It's one of my new favorites for sure. But with 2, there's not a ton to say. I think one of the reasons that for me it's one of the best is because it's tight. Like the environments are the exact size that they should be. And you're never anywhere for too long. That's one of the major reasons. It's just really, really good game design. And it is scary at times, but I will say that nothing ever quite scared me, with the exception of another one coming up, but nothing scared me quite that much as the first one. And I think it really is because maybe the original 2 wouldn't have this problem, but 2 Remake, it's a very sensationalized remake. I mean, it's bombastic. It's got the music is flaring, the gunshots are loud, the zombies are screaming, and to me sometimes that overload on the senses makes it a little less scary. Actually, I like the subtle scares, but didn't matter much. To me, it's kind of, I like that it never scared me too much. And it's just constantly full of these moments. 2 is constantly full of, it's always keeping itself fresh, right? So like, you got this segment, you've beaten the police station, right? And you've fought zombies this whole time, zombies. And now you're in this next section in this garage, and now you have to fight dogs, completely different behavior, like vicious pooches. And it's cool because you kind of have to strategize differently. Oh, now it's time to whip out the shotgun. It's simple stuff, but it's just stuff I really, really enjoy. And there's that satisfaction of I saved my ammo. So I get to take out this hard enemy quicker than I would otherwise because I was smart and I saved my ammo because I knew. And then you're satisfied when you do it. You feel proud of yourself. And that's one of the major reasons 2 is maybe my favorite. It's just so quintessential, just zombie horror, shoot zombies. It's awesome. If I had any complaints about 2, I don't have many complaints about these games in general, but if there is one thing about 2 that I would have loved to have seen more, I was kind of disappointed that you don't see much of Raccoon City. I mean, obviously this is a remake, so if I had played the original, I should have already known that. So it's not really the remake's fault, but it's just the police academy, the sewer, a little bit of the city, and like some tiny little areas, and then the laboratory. And it's all good stuff, but to me, in order to really get a sense of like, oh my God, this is the apocalypse. Holy hell, I am up against the world here. 2 doesn't quite get that. It's more of a confined thing, which is fine. 3 does. We'll talk about that. But yeah, all that contributes to why I think it's easily, one of the best. And there is two extra things that in particular I have to note. One thing I found with this series, it was fun to discover what I like, what I don't like, right? I actually like the limited controls. I don't mind them. I love the survival aspects. I like having to use ink ribbons. I can play a game without it, but I like it. But the big one is the Resident Evil series has, from what I gather, two different ways to upgrade your weapons. There is the original way of finding weapon mods and upgrades in the world. Usually you find something that unlocks, a box or something that has like something that makes your shotgun faster or your pistol or your machine gun have less recoil, stuff like that, right? Or they use like merchants to upgrade your stuff and you pay money. And oh boy, do I prefer the former. I think it's so much more satisfying when you find your weapon upgrade. It just feels more like I made it happen. I'm being rewarded for my exploration, for my hard work. I like that stuff. I play Metroid games. I play Zelda games, right? I love that stuff when traveling off the beaten path rewards me. And 2 is the pinnacle of that, no doubt. 2 is the pinnacle of that because it's one of the longer entries. So it has that time to, constantly throw new upgrades at you. I will say, however, that one of my problems with the series as a whole is, and people don't agree with this, and I respect it totally. I don't think the games are long enough. And I'll tell you why, right? There is definitely something to be said about short and sweet. Of course, totally get it. Like good pacing, you don't overstay your welcome, replayability. People like that, totally get it. One of the reasons I don't like that Resident Evil games are often too short is I don't have enough time to play with my toys. Like, I get this new weapon only an hour before the end of the game or this month. I want to play with my toys. I want to, I want that weapon upgrade to get some use before the end. I get the Magnum toward the end of the game. I've only shot it 3 times. It's like, I want more time to do that. But that's about it. That's like the only issue I really have. With, for some reason I felt it a lot with 2. I don't know why. I think it's because I was loving it so much that I was like, I can go another 5 hours. What the hell? And then another reason 2 is amazing. And I've been told the original doesn't really have this merit. He's in the original, but Mr. X, oh boy, is that an experience. The first time I knew of him going in, but God, it's terrifying. I love it. And I love you having to, it's just pure horror greatness. Hide in the room. Oh God, where is he? Okay. If I plan, you open up your map and you panic, right? Okay. What's the quickest way to get to a safe room? What's the quickest way to get to that lockbox that I can get with that weapon upgrade I saw? Okay. Here. Okay. Mr. X is right over there. Okay, go. And then you make it and you're like, I am the shit. To me, that's like kind of the Resident Evil experience. But yeah, that's 2. It's great. I love Claire Redfield. I cosplayed her. Then we have 3. Now 3 was an interesting one. Yeah, did I play 3 next? Yes. 3 was an interesting one. Because I was told that this remake was not up to snuff, was not quite as good as the rest of them, and in a rare case was actually worse than the original. So I was like, okay, I'll take to Twitter, I'll ask. I got some mixed results, but a lot of people just said play both. Like, yeah, I'm down with that. I had planned to start with the original 3. But I was going to get it on PS3. My PS3 is not working at the moment, so that sucked. And I'm personally not a huge emulation person. I don't like sitting at a computer. I mean, I know I could technically output it to the TV, but I don't know. So I got 3 Remake. I was fascinated by it. When somebody tells me this one has problems, that makes me curious. That makes me like, Oftentimes, quirky games, weirder games, games with flaws are sometimes the most interesting games and have the most effect on you. So I got Resident Evil 3 Remake, which I was also told is criminally short. It was cool to see Jill back. I loved the representation of her character too, of just kind of like, I'm so done with this shit. Like I just want this. I just want this over. I love it. I love it. It's great because that's how anyone would be. And I'm gonna be honest, guys. I loved 3 Remake. I did not mind it at all. One of the things that I respect so much about 3 Remake is it's different. It's the same, but it's different. And I'll explain what I kind of mean by that. 3 is incredibly fast-paced, go, go, go. Like, you can do this in one sitting. And to me, it gives it a sort of intensity, a sort of urgency that is perfect for what's happening, because 3 takes place in the other half of the day of 2, when basically Raccoon City is just coming to an end. People are just getting killed like crazy. There's fires in the streets. It's mass hysteria. And to me, the pacing of the game just fits that tone perfectly. You are racing to get through this. Like, Jill's world is coming to an end. She has to go, go, go. And I love that intensity with 3 Remake. It's a very different kind of approach to like a story, because in many ways you kind of should play it after 2 Remake. They're kind of companions to each other. Because like I said, they take place during the same day for the most part. 3 ends later. 3 ultimately ends later. Starts before and then ends later, which is funny because it's shorter. But they really are kind of a companion piece, because 3, sometimes it's not even its own story necessarily. It's more just like, I mean, I guess it's a story. It's just craziness. This city is on fire. Jill, get out of the fire. And I liked that a lot. It gave it a different sense to me. Like, especially if you play it after 2 Remake, it kind of has this like finality to it. Like, 2 is so like, okay, you know this place. You know this place is going down. Get out of here. This is the end. You are the last person that just needs to get the hell out. And it's the whole game is just, we need to get out of this fire. Like, the ship is crashing. Get out of this fire. Strangely enough, it reminded me kind of the movie El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie, where like after everything's gone to shit, it's like, Jesse, just get out. You need to get out before it's too late, before this all comes crashing down. 3 has that sense. And that's what I like about it a lot. Could it have been longer? Definitely, because the upgrades were, but it's a more action-oriented Resident Evil game in a way that for me didn't even sacrifice the sense of survival in the way that the next game did. But I really liked it. I don't know. Like, any of my negatives with 3, I guess, are the same with 2. And just like overall, like, yeah, the length. I mean, it was short. But one thing 3 does that is way better than 2, quite frankly, is you see a lot of Raccoon City in 3. That's what I wanted. I want to get that sense. Like, I want to feel not like I'm just confined in this area. I want to know that this city is fucked. I want that feeling of heart pounding, that's just me. I'm weird. But you go through the city streets. You know, you go through other areas of the city and you get that sense. And it's great. I get why people don't like Nemesis, especially because I've been told that in the original 3, he's more like how Mr. X is in 2 Remake, which is scarier for sure. Nemesis starts off scary because he's basically Mr. X, but he can run, which caught me so freaking off guard. But then they make the bizarre decision to have him switch to weapons. And I'm like, oh, you're less scary now. It's less scary that you need weapons. It's more scary if you're able to just wreck the shit out of me with your bare fists. But there you go. Good characters. I really enjoyed Jill in this one. Yeah, and I love the ending. I love it's a perfect cap off to it. And it very much feels kind of like the end. You know, we discovered what Umbrella was in the first one. Now things are worse in the city, and now the city is gone. And it's got that sense of finality to it, which of course then leads us into a new chapter. And the next game I played was the one that I had originally started with. Yeah, I went with Resident Evil 4 Remake before 4 Original. I just thought it looked so good. It looks like it's gonna, you know, it looks like it's gonna satisfy that RE4 itch. I feel like it's gonna be faithful enough to the original. Some people might argue otherwise. But it's a fantastic game. Another one. I'm gonna be honest, guys. I didn't dislike even remotely a single game that I played on this list. And there aren't too many left, but yeah, 4 Remake. It's fantastic. I know what you're thinking. Why would you play 4 Remake before 4 OG, which I did play? But it didn't affect my opinion too much, as you'll find out. But that switch to more action-oriented was definitely interesting. I think 4 Remake, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but 4 Remake and 4, aside from one other entry, which is a side entry, might have been my least favorite. It's tough. They're all phenomenal games, but my problem with 4 is it gets off to the best start ever. It is amazing. Like, oh my God, you get to this village, you are overrun with these. It gets insane. It's that great moment of, this ain't your Resident Evil anymore. Get ready, because things are changing. And it's like, oh, I'm in. Oh my God, let's go. And the game is divided up into 3 sections: the village, the castle, and the island. And each one gets progressively worse, in my opinion. Every single thing in the village I thought was masterpiece material. Just amazing. Oh my, I loved it so much. I love fighting the villagers so much more than the later enemies. Just so good. Also, the creepiest it gets. There's like a graveyard, just great scenery. The game gets off to such a bang. And Leon, what is there to say, right? People love Leon Kennedy, and boy, I get it. He might be my favorite character too, especially in 4. I love how he started off in 2 as this like wide-eyed, naive cop, fresh on the force, and I'm gonna go get him, and we're the best. And he saw the corruption of like his police chief. He saw everything go to hell, and he's kind of like not broken now, but he's just like disillusioned by all this. And is just a sarcastic asshole now. I mean, not an asshole, but he's just sarcastic now and just like, yeah, fuck this shit. And I love it. We need more of that. But it's so raw in a character for that. I love it. And some of the other characters are really good too. I won't talk about the characters yet, because I think the comparison of the characters to the original is more important. But I don't know what it is, but I think the game starts to go a little downhill. Not much, mind you, but a little bit once you get to the castle, and then a little bit more once you get to the island. And I think The castle is terrific, don't get me wrong. It's filled with some really creepy moments. It might even have my favorite moment, that part when you're in like the four fountains of sludge. Some good level design, good backtracking, like, but there's something about that opening village section, and I don't know what it is. That first third of the game that just got it. It just blew me away. I loved it. I loved it. Was refreshing to have more flexibility as Leon, being able to like roundhouse kick people. I mean, yeah, it is more of an action game than a survival game for sure. And, you know, this was apparently the big start of the decline of Resident Evil as a survival experience. And some people said the series in general, which is why I skipped 6. We'll get into it. But at first I really enjoyed it. At its worst, it's like a really good Uncharted game. You know, it's just a really good action game. Kind of reminded me of Uncharted 2 in sections, especially toward the end. But I wondered, I was like, what is this? What is it that I don't like as much about this? Even though I freaking love the game. Don't get me wrong. Loved it. What is it? And I was like, oh, okay. For starters, even though the merchant is a wonderful character, I don't like that everything I do to upgrade my character is just in one shop menu and I use money. I don't like that. I like having to go find it. And all the things that you find in this game are boring treasures. Okay, whatever. That didn't help. And then my one friend pointed this out. Why I think I like fighting the villagers so much more. It's because later on, the enemies are given weapons. And that's a mistake, in my opinion. Yes, it makes the game harder, but there is something so much scarier and intense about an enemy that's slowly coming, maybe not slowly, but coming at you with like a pitchfork or an axe, than there is an enemy far away shooting at you. Now, it retains the former throughout the game, but I don't want to shoot enemies with guns. I don't want to fight enemies with guns. Luckily, there's not too much of it, but I don't find that as exciting for a game like this, for a Resident Evil game. But I mean, it's still filled with such terrific set pieces. It's an incredibly memorable game. Don't get me wrong. Like, and a terrific remake, which we'll get into now. Let's talk about the original 4, which I also played right afterward because I was so curious, right? And I get it. Like, I get it. It's so good. It's so good. Which one did I like more? I don't really know. I don't really think it matters, but I liked certain things about each one more. 4 is more restrictive. Kind of like that. You have to stay in one spot when you shoot. I kind of like that, actually. It's scarier. It's more intense. 4 uses less music. It's less sensationalized. It's more moody. I like that. Yeah, it's cornier, but as if you ignore that, you know, it's all good. Now, there's certain things about the original 4 that are, like I said, I think better. Maybe the pacing, though both games have incredibly good pacing, which is hard to do in my opinion. And I think I enjoyed combat a little more. The original 4 is a more compact game. 4 Remake, as almost every remake is padded and inflated. Except 3 Remake is the opposite, but 4 Remake does that. But there's not too much to say. I mean, overall, it's a terrific game. It's pretty similar. Like the remake really kind of does a good job of getting all the key parts. The one thing that remake does astronomically better, as far as I'm concerned, is anything with the narrative, which I guess is to be expected. Writing has gotten better in video games. And it's every single narrative change is pretty much better. Every single, the things that happen are more exciting. It's better stuff. It would take forever to get into it, but especially the characters. Oh my God. Every single character is better in Remake, with maybe the exception of Sadler, who was never that great in the first place. Why, if your goal is to send Ashley to poison or to turn the president into a evil tentacle monster, then why not let Leon just take her? I don't know, maybe I'm whatever. It's fine. The stories are not the highlight of these games, at least not to me. The lore is. I really like the lore. I love Umbrella, the T virus, the G virus, all that stuff. That I like. But I'm getting a little off track here. All the narrative stuff, the character stuff, especially Ashley, so much better in the remake. Maybe I liked Remake a little more. I don't know. I mean, they're both incredibly good and very worth my time. And I'm glad I played them both. So then I took a little bit of a sidetrack, and I had always wanted to play Resident Evil Revelations because I was there when the 3DS launched, and I remember the 3DS did not have a comfortable launch by any stretch of the means, but one of the big games that it was advertised for it was Resident Evil Revelations. And I remember I played the demo and I was like, oh, I kind of like that. This was a long time ago. So I was like, let's go back. Let's go back and finish this now that you know Resident Evil. And Revelations, there's not too much to say. I mean, at first it's like, oh, this is some classic Resident Evil stuff that I love. This is survival. This is less enemies on the screen. Get away from me, get away from me, get them away from me. Just more survival. I loved it. The upgrades. It's got a really cool, the highlight of the game for me definitely is like the weapon mod system. Rather than just finding mods for your weapon, you find like individual pieces of stat increases. So it's very RPG-like actually. And you can put 3 slots in each weapon to customize it to your playstyle. That's awesome. Bring it back. I loved it. And overall, it was really cool having a game take place in a ship too. Good setting for that kind of stuff. Overall, it was good. I mean, you can tell it's a handheld game. It's not the most dense, but it was good. Like I said, probably the worst one I played, but I mean, hey, it's a side game, right? It would have been kind of surprising if it wasn't, but I'm still happy I played it. It does make the mistake of becoming more actiony at the end. Why? It's like, we didn't need this. Just increase it a little bit. Just a steady uphill, right? But yeah, then I was ready to move to 5. And I was told that with 5, you have to play a co-op to get the real experience. So I convinced my boyfriend, let's play this. We're looking for a game to play with each other anyway. I apologize for how long this video is, by the way. I'm passionate. I want to talk about it. But you can skip to any individual game that if you'd like. But we started 5. And 5 is a fucking ugly game. It's a hideous game. And normally I would never care about graphics, but oh boy, is it that gray, green, brown era of the friggin' PS3 generation. But whatever, right? So we started it, and I was kind of like, I don't know. I think I'm starting to get a little bit burnt out on this style. The third person, slightly more tankish. I need something to mix it up. I need something to keep it fresh so that I can keep going with the series and stay fully in. Well, how fortunate for me that Resident Evil 7 was basically designed to do that. And designed to take the series back to its roots. And now I'm gonna say something that you're gonna think I'm stupid, right? So I originally was planning on skipping Resident Evil 7 and 8. And not because I thought they were going to be bad or anything. For starters, I'm not a big first-person person. I did it again. First-person lover. One is because I get motion sickness. And these games don't have field of view setting. Please put field of view setting in your first-person games, developers. Thank you. And 2, I thought I thought 8 looked a little weird. I was like, what is going on here? Like, is this doesn't even look like Resident Evil? Or at least what I had seen so far of the series. And 7 because I am terrified of bugs. And my friend said, don't play 7. There's bugs. There's bugs. And, you know, not their fault. They were looking out for me. So I was like, I don't know. But I'm like, okay, fine. I'll give it a shot, I guess. How bad can it be? Well, the answer is 7 is probably my favorite entry in the whole franchise. Like I said, it's either that or 2. 7 is amazing. It is a masterpiece. I love it so much. It is, to me, kind of the ultimate Resident Evil experience. It has a slight issue with not giving you enough time to breathe with your like upgrades and stuff that I thought 2 had. Weird that those are my 2 favorites. But other than that, and that's literally it, I think this game is near perfect. First off, it's the scariest Resident Evil game by a country mile. Holy hell. I genuinely was getting pretty damn creeped out. And I think one of the reasons for that is that all of the supernatural stuff aside, Resident Evil 7 really feels like the kind of situation you could get yourself into. You could, you know? You could stumble upon someone's house accidentally and they turn out to be psychotic people with a torture dungeon. And that's the Baker family, who I did not expect to have as much depth as they do too. And 7 is so good. 7 is just, forget that action. Forget any of that extra stuff, as good as it might have been. We're going straight back to horror survival. Probably the most survival next to the first one. Yeah, easily. It's terrifying. There's constant scares. The spider lady, don't even get me started. The freaking part where you go into to Evelyn's room for the first time, like the walls change and there's like scribbling all up. It's awesome. I love being scared the ever-loving shit out of with 7. It's why else? I mean, it's so tightly designed. It's not, the levels aren't super huge, but they are compact, full of stuff. It's got that Mr. X vibe where you're getting chased around. And it's like you're constantly being chased around by like new characters too. It is terrifying. And it's awesome. More than like any other, it probably gives you that feeling of, I'm doing this. I'm overcoming the impossible. I got the shotgun. I can blow your head off. I will turn the tables. And so many great little set pieces. Oh my God, the garage section. The garage section. It's so good. You're like, I hate this guy. He's a freaking maniac. He's so annoying. He won't die. Oh my God, his car keys. And then you get in the car and you're like, this was literally me, guys. I was like, die, you son of a bitch. I was so like satisfied to just ram that car right into him and save my ass and kill this guy who was just trying to chop my head off. I know it's crazy, but you get that, you know, it's so good. And I love its upgrade system too. It's very simple, but it's great. And it's fully back to that. No merchants, none of that crap. Go find your shit. It's so good. It's just long enough. Never overstays its welcome. 7 is phenomenal. It has such a lovely, just subtle finale that's so good. I do wish that the way Mr. Baker was finished off was more satisfying, because he's a thorn in your side for like the first quarter of the game, right? And I thought it was going to be like the whole game, which I thought could have been more interesting, you know, if like it wasn't until the end that you're finally able to. But it has a different vision, and that's fine. But the way he's ultimately killed off and finished is really unceremonious. Like, it's really unsatisfying. He just turns into like a monster, and at first I didn't realize that was him. He just shows up out of nowhere, and then you just kill him, and it's like, oh, that wasn't as satisfying as ramming you with my car, with your car. Yeah, I mean that's a minor complaint. I just like to bring up some random stuff to spark conversation, but and also Ethan Winters. Now, let's talk about Ethan Winters. And in order to talk about Ethan Winters, we need to talk about the last game that I've played, the most recent one. Resident Evil 8, the most recent game in the series. Now, Ethan Winters is not a memorable character in 7 by any stretch of the means. There's nothing particularly likable about him. He acts like a robot. Sometimes he's not reacting in the way you would think anyone would in this situation. I was like, oh God, I don't know about this character compared to all the other ones. But as it goes on, Ethan Winters, I think, is maybe the most interesting protagonist in the whole series, because you get to 8. Resident Evil 8. There's a lot to say about Resident Evil 8. It's the latest one in the series. I felt like I had to play it after 7. I did do the DLC for 7 as well, quite good. But I felt like I had to play it. And Resident Evil 8, well, let's talk about Ethan Winters, right? What makes Ethan Winters so interesting is that he is the most unremarkable man ever. But that is what is great about him. He is not a member of STARS. He is not a soldier. He's not a cop. He is not somebody who is used to any situation like this. Ethan Winters is a poor Joe Schmo husband who fell into a nightmare. And he has to find his way out. And in some strange way, that actually makes him so much more relatable. Like, I feel so bad for this guy. He doesn't deserve this. He's a tragic character. And though he's not particularly memorable in 7, because of that, it kind of really makes 8 work for him, where you see just what this completely unremarkable man is ultimately capable of, what he will do, how he overcomes this. And it's emotional. The 8 is the most emotional Resident Evil game. I actually cried at one point. And I think the ending is a powerhouse. I really do. It's like a gut punch. But that's the ending. He's a good character. A lot of people are like, he's boring. Like, but that's kind of the point. He's not anyone special. He is someone who's very specifically not special, who just happened to fall into a Resident Evil game. He's me with no talent. Just like if all of a sudden I found myself in a psychopath's house. You know, that's interesting. Not every character should be like that, but it's interesting. And it really has a satisfying payoff. Really satisfying payoff. But 8, let's talk about 8. Oh boy. 8 is a game. It's a game. It's you know, 8 is simultaneously like one of my favorites and one of my least favorites. It's an interesting game. 8 is in my opinion a greatest hits album of Resident Evil. This was kind of the developers showing off a little bit, kind of being like, we know what Resident Evil is. We know what you like. Here's all of it. And you get that because the game has this structure where it's divided into 4 major sections. And I think each section is kind of a different piece of Resident Evil gameplay, right? You've got Castle Domitresque, where it's very standard, like Resident Evil 2, like kind of labyrinth area, backtracking, puzzles, and run away from something. Pretty standard Resident Evil stuff. We love it. Great. Maybe my favorite section of the game, but we'll get into that. And then you get House Beneviento, where it is just pure survival horror. In every sense. More survival horror than Resident Evil has ever been. And oh god. That house. I've seen some things. Possibly the scariest moment in the entire series, but super memorable. And then you get to Moreau, which is a very, very, very linear action set piece, kind of like 4 a little bit. And then the Heisenberg factory is kind of a little bit of everything, right? But I think you get a helping of kind of every piece of Resident Evil in there. One of the problems is I think it makes it a little more quantity over quality. Sometimes it's like, yes, I'm getting all this, but it's not the best of what each individual thing is, but it gives the game a ton of variety. And I appreciate that. I like when games are weird and just try to do multiple things in a single game. I'm a big fan of the Jak and Daxter games, and they do that a lot, right? They're like multiple genres in one. And 8 does that. And I made this comparison, and maybe I'm nuts, but I feel like it's like a Resident Evil theme park, because you have your hub, right? And each direction from the hub is a different like Resident Evil ride. Here's your survival horror. Here's your labyrinth. Here's your action, you know? And the hub is even a statue with a castle in front of it. I don't know. Maybe it's intentional. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But that's what I got out of it. But it's cool. It is absolutely a little bit of everything you love about Resident Evil. That's 8 to a T. That is 100% what 8 is. Everyone will get at least something out of it, I think. But, you know, there is that whole thing when you try to please everyone, you please no one. But no, I think it's ultimately really good. 8 is weird. I don't 100% know where I stand on it at the end. Is it my favorite? Is it one of my least favorites? I don't for sure know. I will say that despite the fact that Duke is my favorite of the merchants, and I know that's sacrilege, but I really like Duke's character, it was disappointing to have a merchant back. Resident Evil 8's upgrade system is better than 4's, but still, I like finding my upgrades. And then let's talk about the tone, right? It's to my knowledge, the only Resident Evil that kind of leans into gothic territory, and I am a huge fan of gothic horror. That is my favorite stuff. Vampires, werewolves, creepy statues. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So when I started off with Resident Evil 8, and it's got a fantastic intro segment, I was like, oh my god, I am here. Let's do this. Lichens, creepy snow village, statues of like things in graveyards, castles with vampires. Oh my god, best Resident Evil ever. And then just like Bloodborne, it says, nope, fuck all that. It's gonna get weird. I mean, some of that sticks around, but kind of after you beat the castle, other than some werewolf sections, it's kind of more all over the place, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I'd call a factory gothic horror or a pond with a big fish monster. But, you know. So my favorite stuff was probably the beginning. But it's a good game. Really good game. Yeah. Wow. I talked a lot about all that. But that's my experience through the Resident Evil series so far. You guys have fallen in love. I love it. Like, and I'm so open to recommendations of other games that are like it. I love, in particular, the things I loved the most were satisfying exploration and backtracking. And finding upgrades in particular, just that satisfying feeling. And the thrill, that rush, that There's 4 zombies outside of this room. I need to think this through. How do I do this? What bullets do I use? Should I use my grenade? Well, if I get there, should I save? That's one of the reasons I played 2 on hardcore. The only one I played on hardcore. And I did it! I sucked at it, but I did it. I felt great when I was done. I beat 2 on hardcore, and it's ultimate survival. I loved it. Oh my God. But yeah, those are the stuff I love from it. And as far as my continuation of the series, so I'm putting it on a brief hold because a couple little games called Jedi Survivor, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Final Fantasy 16, Xenoblade 3 DLC, Horizon Forbidden West DLC, those are coming out. So I have to focus on those a little bit for now. But I do plan on going back. My current plan is to play 3 OG, the original 3, because, you know, I've been told it's a very different experience. I kind of want to play 0 because I think the idea of a Resident Evil on a train sounds cool. I've heard mixed things. Code Veronica. I definitely want to play Code Veronica, which I've been told is like the real 3, pretty good. And I definitely am going to finish 5 with Raul co-op. And I really want to play Revelations 2 because my girl Claire's in it. Other than that, I'm open to, if you guys, I mean, there's not many other ones as far as I know, but, you know, just let me know. I'll get to it at some point. But I hope you enjoyed my, popping my Resident Evil cherry. That's weird. It's a blast, and it's terrifying. I am so scared. I don't sleep at night after Spider Lady. It's great. No, I'm fine. It's just enough. I love it, and it's so cool to have a new series that I've fallen in love with. I've given you kind of my take on everything. Let me know your take. What's your favorite entry? What parts do you like about the series? What do you don't? Do you like the remakes? What do you think about what I said? Am I insane? More insane? Above all, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to hear more about my thoughts on Resident Evil or see my cosplay or as I continue the series, follow me on Twitter. Chrono Katie. Yeah, you can do that. I do have another video coming up, and it's a surprise, and it's kind of a big one. So hopefully you can look forward to that. But thanks, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Resident Evil is awesome. You have a good one. Bye.